Hi, YouTube.
But you're gonna get a YouTube video of me raging on League.
Okay, so let's say I'm just going to close this out. Let's say that you have your particles that are in here. Inside of Universe of War Earth Assault, it's necessary that you extract and make sure that you have all the textures you need inside this textures folder inside the game. So you have art, textures, DDS, all the textures need to be in here. Extract them, put them in here. If you have new textures, those new textures go in here as well. But basically, you're going to go to Particles Editor, and you're going to click on this Particles Editor exe. All right. And let's say that we want to edit a particle. More specifically, we've tracked down this particle for the seer, okay, that uses this particle right here, this PPZI seer aura thing.
Mhm.
Um, just to keep it clear, whenever there's a particle, and these are normally applied in effects. You have XML effects, and then this is where all the effects for all the different things are stored. And specifically for particles, you'll find effect component, you'll find particle system type. Those are the things that you want to look for when you're looking for like a physical particle that shows up. And in this case, it refers to this, and this is in the particles XML file, which is just an XML. This contains all the particles and defines all the particles in the game and how they're supposed to render. Um, and actually, I was wrong. You can adjust the scale factor. That's cool. But basically, this is the object here. This is your ALO file. And what you do is in your particles editor, let's assume that you have an extracted copy of the game. Okay. What you want to look for is you go to your extraction, you go to data, art, and then models, okay, and you have all your stuff in here. We're going to search for this, and you can see that this pops up. This is your particle. So we can open it, and then we have the particle effect right here. Now, as a basic rundown for what everything does, the Creator tab it allows you to adjust various different things about this particle. So, for instance, like right here, the LOD distance. This tells you how close or far away you can see the object, like when you get near it. So, for example, if you are farther than like 2,000 units away from this particle effect, it's just going to disappear. You won't see it anymore. So for like really big particle effects, you want to raise this number up. For smaller ones, not so much. You have the particles interval. Okay, so that's like how many particles spawn at once when something is happening. And then you have the spawn interval, which I think is the time. Like this is how often it happens. So like if I set this to 0.5, all right, it's going to spawn twice as many. If I raise this even lower, like something like this, it's going to get really obnoxious. You see that this whole ring right here occurs. But that basically is spawning in these little objects. I think they are set up differently with like the billboarding effect. But you can edit individual particles by clicking on these sections right here. Okay, so this one you could tell that controlled the ring, and this one controls the other sort of ring, like these rings that are spawning around it. And something to keep in mind, it's not always going to be named particle. I believe you can edit these and you can rename them and call them whatever you want. So when I was messing with the nuke, you had like the stem, you had the plume, you had the fire plume, you had the fire stem, you had all that sort of stuff just lined up and organized. This is kind of sloppy because it's just particle and particle, but it's just two particles going on, so it's really nothing that complex. But then when you come down here, you have your positioning and your velocity. Now, again, there's nothing too special about this, but the position controls the spawning position of the object. Okay, so this is like whenever this is basically where the particle spawns. Like you can tell that this particle right here, this ring, is spawning at z level 10, y0, x0, and that makes it to where it's spawning just a little bit above the ground. If I change this to like 50, then all the particles are going to be spawning up here. But it's not just for a single position. You can have it run off in a direction, or you can make it a sphere. So for example, if I did something like this, so you have max radius, it's going to spawn randomly within this whole sphere. But it also does things for like range. So this is kind of like a box. Everything spawns within a box, and you can define how far that box is. So you have your x coordinate, y coordinate, z, like maximum z, maximum z, minimum z, all that sort of stuff. It's just spawning within a box. You have spherical range, you have cylinders, you have torus, which that's like a ring. So if I increase the radius of this to something really large, then you can tell that all of these are spawning in like a big fat ring. But that's the position, okay? So that controls where exactly your particle is spawning. But then you also have your velocity, and the velocity uses something very similar, but basically that's controlling where exactly the object is moving after it spawns. So like if I change this to a point and I don't know, put this in the z direction, what that's going to do is those particles are like moving out this way. So they're moving up, I believe. Because I think so. Could be wrong about that.
How would you change the color of it?
So, we covered like the basic position and velocity. Let me put that back to what it was. There we go. So this is a range. It's basically doing everything within like a 10 by 10 by 10 area, and it's just going off in random directions. As for the color, you have all these different parameters right here. You have size, you have physics, rotation, color. This is color right here, and this is set up as a keyframe color. And what keyframe colors do is it makes it to where you use this graph. And this graph here basically makes it to where you can control the color of the object at different times during its lifetime. So this is like from the very beginning to the end of the particle existing. Okay? You have killer right here. This basically tells you how long the particle exists. So you have the stop time. This means that the particle spawns for 1 second and it basically disappears after 1 second. If I change this to something like 10, then it's going to stay for much longer. You can see that it fades in. There's a lot more of them spawning because more of them have a chance to spawn in, and then they're slowly fading away. But the color here, this happens over the entire duration of the particle existing. So what you can see here is it starts out black, it turns yellow, and then turns black again. And that's part of what gives it this sort of faded look. It's like it starts out black when it spawns, turns yellow, and then it fades away into another color. You basically have instructions for the commands on how to edit this right here. I can tell you if you hold Alt and left click one of these points, you can adjust it. So if I were to change this here and make it red, okay, and I clicked OK, that's going to make this particle red from the center. Same thing if I just adjusted this, made it blue. You can also adjust how visible it is. You can see that the alpha is 90. I believe 255 could be higher. That's like super visible. That means like there's no transparency whatsoever inside of the object. But if I were to change this to something like 30, because I guess it was 90 before, or you know what, maybe 15, then it's going to be super, or at least in theory, it's supposed to be super faded.
Start to 1.
Well, it's not just that. Yeah, like the alpha here is really strong. Let me change all of these to 15 as well. Hmm.
Because the issue I was having was it was just so bright that it became an eyesore almost.
Of course, I could be wrong about this. The alpha normally adjusts the visibility of the item, but maybe that's just because of the density of them. Who knows? But that's how you adjust your color. Furthermore,
Here's
like
an
if you
idea.
choose lighter colors as well, that's another way to make it sort of fade away or change or do whatever else. Um, and here's the other thing. So you have your keyframing right here. Um, you can actually see that you have the keyframe for rotation and you have the keyframe for size. You can add keyframes as well. Like you can add keyframes for physics, for size, for rotation, all that sort of stuff. Um, but right here, you basically have size. Okay, so you have the size of the particle, and you can tell that it just slightly grows over time. If I were to move this up, then it's going to grow super big whenever it moves like that. Or if I bring it down to here, then it's actually going to do the opposite, and it's going to shrink. It starts out here, and then it gets smaller. And the other thing too is that if you hold control and then left click, you can create points. So you can actually make this thing do all kinds of wacky stuff where it's like shrinking and growing. It's like throughout its entire lifetime. You can also hold control shift and click in order to delete keyframes or key points. So yeah, there's that. And again, for rotation, rotation is also keyframed. It has keyframe rotation right here. So if you are going to adjust this and make it to where it rotate, it basically just doesn't, well, it rotates just barely, just a little bit throughout its lifetime. But if you did something like this, let me make it more. Yeah, I think it's spinning. Maybe. Big maybe. But normally rotation puts spin on the object. It makes the texture literally rotate either left or right or whatever else. Um, but that's all.
Speed.
That's all relative. Physics. This does no physics modifiers applied to it, but generally speaking, physics can be used to create a vortex where the item is spinning. Sometimes it can be used to make a particle attract itself to a bone. I could be wrong about this, but I think that's what the glyph carver does. That the laser beam is actually attracted to a bone and it hones in on that object and it moves towards it. Or in some cases, like with the nuke, it's just a simple, I want you to keyframe going in a specific direction. So let's say we added a modifier to this and we wanted keyframed acceleration. And we clicked OK on this. This basically adds a new keyframe specifically for acceleration. And this is the direction for the acceleration. So let's say I change this to like 20, and that should go in the up direction. And if I change the acceleration, like I think if I move this up here, or I could be wrong again, it's supposed to move up. But maybe there's some weird properties with this thing. Okay, yeah, it's moving up. Like you have acceleration over time. I could do that. But I end up having to fool around with this to get it to do what I want a lot of the time. Like, I don't always know what I'm doing. I play around with things. I figure things out. But acceleration basically makes it to where it moves more in a particular direction, and you're able to control the intensity of that acceleration through the keyframe like this. You can obviously delete keyframes as well if you prefer to do that. Um, but you also have the rendering, and this actually controls what particle is being used for this. So take for example, this is using the master particle TGA, which contains a lot of different basic particles with the shader name as well. And the way this is being rendered is it's choosing a specific part of that texture, since there's actually like a lot of different effects on it, and it's rendering what's on that. So I'm trying to think of where that's at. It's either, well, I guess it's here. Yeah, you have anchor point center, you have the aspect ratio. Oh, wait, it's in UV, my bad. So you see how you have this? These are the coordinates of the textured item. And that's basically pointing to a specific location. You have the X and Y coordinate of that texture, and then you have the width and the height. And that's basically saying how large it is. So you have the location and you have the size. And when you're rendering this, it's basically pointing out that exact location or that exact item. So let's say I wanted to change the physical appearance of this particle into something else. What I'd need to do is open this up. And you're actually going to want to refer to a DDS file, not a TGA. It's a little weird like that.
This whole time, all I asked was just, how do I make something not as bright? And here you want like a 45
Well,
minute tangent.
we're trying to make a video, so
TED
shush.
Talk, man.
We're trying to teach people how to do stuff.
Papa's
Yeah.
TED Talk.
But let's say you wanted to use, I don't know, like this wooden pine tree DDS file. I believe you can copy this name, and you can put it into here. Yeah, and that changes it to the tree. However, you want to change the UV so that it's the correct size. So I believe you'd set this to 0, and then 0 again, and yeah, it should be 1:1 in scale, but I could be wrong. Yeah, something's definitely... Actually, no, I think it's based on the image scale itself. So... or not. But you kind of get the gist of how that works. Let me look at Black Ant's thing when he pulled up that rosy texture. So we have videos and pictures.
Recording.
Right.
So now we have making change map.
I just want to see the rosy particle that he did.
Okay.
To the image.
To .tga, what we do is we go to the. Let's say we just grab this random smoke test, right?
Right.
So what we do is we go to the art folder, textures, DDS, shove it in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see how it's a DDS file. So we just only want the name. You just shove this .tga. But you might notice it might not show up. This is because we have something called a UV map and it's set to the specific size. But if I set this to the full size, now you can see the texture.
Gotcha.
Yeah, allegedly I did that right, but Maybe I shouldn't have used the tree texture. There's something screwy with it. I don't know, what if I use this instead? So be under the render tab. Put this in. It's definitely green now. We do have UV constant. That could be part of the problem. No. Oh yeah, you also have size variation right here. This basically makes it to where some particles are bigger and some are smaller, and that makes it randomly spawn at different sizes. Still, what did he do differently?
Well,
Oh, you know what? The render mode, it probably isn't the same, maybe. I don't know. Point is, I think you get the gist, at least, of how this thing is supposed to work and what it does. But this is still driving me crazy. I don't know why that's not working. Ew. Wait, I can do it that way? Oh. Oh, this like shows me the physical texture. Okay, that's kind of cool. But there's something screwy going on here if it's rendering like this. Okay, did not know you could use the pick button like that. That's kind of cool. But another trick, okay, which I have been able to use before, is you see how you have these individual particles right here, and each one of them kind of do their own thing, like they're all kind of separate, but they're bunched together. Well, one thing that you can do, assuming that you're still alive, is you can head over to File, and you can actually open up multiple particle effects. So assuming that there's another particle effect that you like I don't know, I'm just going to pull up something random, like Skylord Engine Light. You can actually pull up multiple particle effects on top of each other. So you can actually view and edit multiples of these at once in the same editor. But moreover, if there's something that you like you took a look at this beam and you went, I actually like that and I want to apply that to my current effect, you can take something like this, you can copy the particle or cut it or do whatever, and then you can come up here and then you can paste the particle, and now this ray of light thing is added to the particle that we've been working on. And that's something that you can use where if you're playing the game and you see foot stomps or you see smoke or you see fire or some sort of really cool effect where you're all like, I want that, or I want something that behaves similarly to that with the physics, or just something that you like, you can actually take those effects from other particles and put it inside of your own. said and done, let's say that you finished editing your particle, you like what you see, you finished editing it, like whatever. To save it, what you do is you take your particle here and you go to File, Save As, and you're just going to name it any old thing. We can put this in downloads just for example or whatever. And I wouldn't name it the same thing as what it was before unless you're editing it or changing it. I personally keep it outside of the mod so I can swap them in and out. Don't ever change the particle effect name. Like, if you name it from the particle editor and then you decide to go into your file explorer and change the name of it in there, don't do that. That'll make it to where the particle won't work in the game. Whatever name you call it from here is what you should put in the game. So you could call it something like my effect. myEffect.alo, save it, and basically it's extracted like that. And you can even open that same particle in your particles editor from here if you wanted to. But you're just going to take that, you put it in the game, and then whatever effect that you're replacing or you're creating, doing whatever else, you just go back to that particles tab where this is, and you would just replace that land model name with your new effect. But again, you can open this, you can remove particles. Like if you're done with a particle or you don't want to mess with it anymore, you can close an emitter. Close all of these. But let's, like, yeah, like you can do that. If you wanted to go back to editing the particle you were working on, you can just go open, my effect, open like that, and then boom, reopens. And you can touch this, mess with it, do whatever you want with it. But
BRB, I'm gonna get a sandwich.
alrighty. I think that should conclude things for now. Do you understand, or at least did I tell you enough for you to understand?
I mean, I asked what's 1 + 1, and you're like, all right, calculus time. You went pretty in
Time to
depth,
go into
yeah.
the quadratic formula, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like, yeah, you went, but you more than answered the question. It just, yeah. I'm gonna go make myself a
Also,
sandwich or think of something.
unrelated,
See,
you have the
BRB.
simulation tab right here. And this actually controls when the particle effect stops, when it starts, and it also allows you to pause it and play it, respectively. You can tell the animation is playing the whole time. It actually loops back after some time, after the animation has played. You also have access to things like the brightness right here, which is interesting. That might actually have an effect on the brightness of the effect that we were going over before. I'm not exactly sure what all of this does, but yeah, that's pretty much a gist of how the particles editor works and how you can make your own particles.